So what was it that first got you into playing football in the first place?
Definitely mum and dad. Grew up in a household of European immigrants, so football was the first sport of choice. Had a younger brother too, so could obviously play in the backyard, which was great. Dad coached my teams. Mum was real supportive with taking me to training and all that, so they were definitely the first influence.
So where was your first club?
It's called Cashmere, doesn't exist anymore. Part of Cashmere Technical now, down in Christchurch. When you're a teenager, you always think you're ready for it, even when you're not. And that's what I learned, where you come from New Zealand and you think you're one of the better players, and then you go to Europe and you realise how much ability there is out there. And I was in a team of basically Swiss youth internationals, so very steep learning curve. I would say very hard times as well in terms of maintaining confidence, or rather losing confidence and trying to find it again. And that was part of the reason why I left. The other part was because I didn't make it to the next level, which would have been the reserves. So I chose to go to the United States of America instead and do the university system, which it's a more difficult path to get selected, especially nowadays. When I was there was still quite a lot of players getting drafted. So anyone who does it now is exceptional, really. But in my day, there was probably about 50 players that got drafted, and the best part of it was getting the education for sure. I think that's super important to get something alongside your football, especially if you're not hitting the highest level straight away. You know, we've got some fantastic examples in New Zealand who are doing that right now, but that wasn't me. So when I got drafted by Vancouver, obviously extremely proud moment for myself and for my family. But then you're there and you're on trial basically. You know, it's a big show with the draft, and then you go to pre-season and you don't have a contract, so you have to earn your way in. And I wasn't good enough to play for the MLS team, so I signed for the USL team, the second team.
So a few years there, and then obviously came back to New Zealand to play for playing back in Christchurch. How was it after you've been in that system, kind of coming back to the league here?
Oh, this is where the interesting part of the story starts, where you spend 10, 12 years of your teenage life thinking that you want to be a pro. You play 1 year professional, it doesn't go great, and suddenly you're questioning all these assumptions that you had. So I came back to New Zealand in a really tough place with football, and thankfully Canterbury United at the time was full of great characters. So reignited the love of football, playing with some really good friends, lots of laughs at training. So for me it was a fantastic league and environment to come back into.
So after being back in Christchurch for a bit, you made the move over to Sweden, which is quite a unique move. What was it that made you kind of want to take that leap?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. When I was back here playing for Canterbury, I wanted to go back to the USL, but no clubs there wanted to sign me. So I was going to go and play in Australia in the NPL. I'd agreed a deal with a club, and after this deal had been agreed, I was about to move over, and then the coach messaged me 2 days before, said, "Oh, sorry, we gave your spot to someone else." So this is March maybe. Transfer windows are closed everywhere, so I didn't really have any options. And I had one friend who had an agent in Sweden, and he said to me, "Why don't you just text him and see what happens?" So I text him and he goes, "Yeah, I can't sort you out with anything right now, but in the summertime, when the proper European transfer window opens, I could sort you out. So why don't you come and play for my granddad's club in the 7th division of Sweden, in the middle of nowhere, just to get some experience in Sweden and see what happens." And this is where being naive is probably a good thing. I had no idea what was happening, so I said, okay, let's try. And my brother was in Europe at the time at university, so I thought, okay, I'll go for 2 or 3 months, do this thing, and if it doesn't work out with football, then I go on holiday with my brother, we have a good time, and then we see what happens after that. But yeah, I played for this amateur team for 2.5 months. You know, 2 trainings a week, 10 people showing up to training, just absolute jokes basically. And then went on trial, as my agent promised me, with some 3rd division clubs, which is semi-professional level in Sweden.
So obviously you were there for a number of years and kind of rose up the ranks in Sweden, and really kind of built a life there, I guess, at that stage.
Building a life there is the best way to describe it. When I compare how I went there to how I came back to New Zealand, it was a very empowering experience, also very difficult. But I started off at a 3rd division club called Nyköping, played half the season there, and then basically didn't get my contract renewed. So I was searching for a new club, ended up in all sorts of places, you know, just carrying big suitcases around, crazy times. ended up in Denmark, like sleeping in hostels the night before I was supposed to go on trial, like just stupid things. But ended up in a place called Varnamo. It was actually the last place I went on trial, so it was basically this or nothing. And had a week of a trial there. The coach liked me, so I played 4 seasons in total there. And you know, sometimes in football you need that slice of luck to go your way, and it did there because the team was fantastic. Our second season we got promoted to the second division, which is pretty much fully professional, and then the season that we're in the second league we went straight up to the first league. So I guess that's where I kind of came onto the scene for New Zealand. I was 26 and made my debut for the All Whites, and yeah, met my partner over there, Lisa, which is great. We live together here now and met heaps of people, did some funny jobs while I was semi-pro, ventilation technica, worked in a factory making like Volvo steel parts, you know. So you experienced all facets of life, which was pretty cool.
Volvo, very appropriate job for being in Sweden, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, it's so stereotypical. We made other stuff too, you know, like, but that was, I remember that was one of the pieces that we made, that's what I remember, yeah.
So obviously, as you said, you made your All Whites debut in your kind of mid to late 20s. Did you think that was going to be on the cards when you went over to Sweden? Was that kind of, was the national team, where was that in your thinking, I guess, when
When I was maybe like 14, I wrote down 4 goals for football, and I had achieved all 3 except for the national team one. So for me, that was always the last thing in my career that I wanted to do. And so when I got called up, it was a dream come true, basically. After all those years of thinking, honestly, I didn't think it was going to happen, you know. The way it happened actually was, it was a Bahrain tour before the tour I got called up, and I didn't even know that All Whites had a game. And my mates have texted me going, why aren't you in the squad, you know? And I looked at the squad and I thought, oh, I'm actually playing at a level where I could be in this squad. And then the next one was the one I got called up, and I knew that was happening maybe a couple of weeks before, but you obviously got to keep it a little bit quiet. So it was very hard to do, especially, pretty sure my dad told a bunch of people.
We'll have a word with him about that.
Yeah, lucky he lives in Greymouth, so I'm pretty sure that didn't get back up here, but yeah, I was stoked with that.
So how did it feel when you first put that shirt on and walked on the pitch to represent Aotearoa New Zealand?
Mixture of feelings. Of course, it's before the game, so you're extremely nervous, especially when you've waited so long for a moment like this. You also, it was probably the first time I walked into a changing room and I just wanted to take a photo of my shirt, just to capture it, to relive that memory. And obviously I knew quite a lot of the boys on the team already, so that helped to settle the nerves. And singing the national anthem, I remember practicing on the bus on the way up because I didn't know it. Now I do, but yeah, it was great. Like, you kind of had goosebumps, eh? And I guess we'll get to it soon, but playing at home against Samoa was really cool as well. I guess that was even more real in a sense.
So obviously you were in Sweden for a number of years, and then unfortunately got injured and came back here for a while to recover. With your career going so well over there, when that kind of happened, how did you deal with that sort of situation?
Yeah, it was very tough because it was probably the first time where football was starting to open up options for me. I'd always kind of chased football, given up things for football, and I was at a level where I was doing quite well in Sweden, and all the clubs were starting to contact Varnamo. I had 6 months left of my contract. I thought, okay, here we go, like, I'm going to step up, and obviously tore the ACL, so I pretty much damaged goods from there. No one's really going to sign you injured like that, so the choice was to stay in Varnamo or to come back to New Zealand. Myself and Lisa decided we wanted a life over on this part of the world, so then it was playing amateur football again for Eastern Suburbs, which is probably similar to some other aspects of my story where you go like this. So it was one of those moments where you have to build yourself up again intrinsically, and made the best of it, met some great people at Eastern Suburbs, got into coaching, which was a much better job than working in the factory or cleaning people's houses, so that was great. So like the balance of life in New Zealand was really good. Football was really tough, but there were other things that we knew that we would gain from coming back here.
So obviously you come back, and not long after you're back, there's chat of an A-League side setting up in the city you've just moved to. As soon as that club was announced, was this immediately on your radar?
Of course. It was definitely something that I'd been hoping for. I think most of New Zealand had been hoping for it, and then was doing decent for Eastern Suburbs. I knew I had a decent history at could be an opportunity for me to prove myself again at a professional level. So just really grateful that they chose to give me a chance. And yeah, it's a bit of a whirlwind. Everything happened so quickly that you hardly got your feet underneath you and you're already here. And then we're playing our first A-League game and everything's first at the moment. And I think we're still a little bit on that journey. But people keep describing it as a fairy tale, and it is. We've worked real hard for it. So I think we knew with the kind of things that we were doing in pre-season, we would be physically, mentally, emotionally prepared to give it a real good shot. Then a lot of the other boys have A-League experience, so they know what's going on. For me, I had no clue how good the other teams were going to be, how good the other players were going to be. So definitely the first 3 to 5 games, you're thinking, all right, like, we'll just see how we go, and we kept winning. And now there's, I think, a real belief in the whole squad that this could be for real. Obviously, it's still 10 games to go, so no one's getting ahead of themselves, but definitely good vibes in the team at the moment.
And how did it feel coming into a squad where you knew a lot of the players already, or had played with a lot of players at All Whites level or whatever already?
Yeah, this was the best. When I came here, I knew half the team from playing in this league, and then it felt like every 2 weeks they were signing one of my mates. So I was like, how good's this, you know? I was like, oh, get to see him again, you know, get to spend. Previously in Sweden, you know, I'd be buzzing to go away on the All Whites tours because you get to see the people that you were closest with. I was definitely closer with the people in the national team than I was with the players I played with in Sweden. And now you have that almost on an everyday level. So that's kind of what you want, right? To play or to work with people that you feel really connected to. So it's a big bonus.
So obviously, as part of this, you've also been kind of recalled to the All Whites after a while out with injury. And as you mentioned already, played home games here at the end of last year. How did it feel playing for the All Whites in New Zealand?
It's difficult to describe because when you feel that so much emotion in the moment, you can't really verbalize it. But I think we've all felt that, you know, when there's that moment where the crowd just, you know, goes up and the noise level ratchets up and you have this feeling in your body. That's what it felt like. It felt awesome to play physically in front of people who had watched me for a long time when there was no one else watching. Right, we're playing in Sweden, 150 people in the stands, but mum and dad are still texting me after the game going, oh, well done, you know, that kind of stuff. So to make it real for them, I think was the most amazing feeling to have.
We're not long till we Whites play the semi-final and hopefully final of the Oceania qualifiers. Obviously winning the final would see the team go to the World Cup. What would it mean to you to be part of that squad to go to the World Cup in 2026?
Oh mate, surreal. You know, I was obviously part of the last qualifying round where we lost to Costa Rica, and I don't think anyone's forgotten the pain of that. To be able to give that to New Zealand and be a part of that and actually physically contribute would give immense satisfaction, I think. To see that I was in my teens when New Zealand went to the 2010 World Cup, and I remember exactly how that felt, watching it on TV and everything. So if we could give that again to the next generation of football players, I think we would look back on it and just feel really good.
And how would it feel for your footballing journey to feature making Volvo car parts at one end and then playing against some of the best players in the world at the other end?
Empowering, eh? Like, it gives you a sense of calm and belief in yourself. I don't mean just on the football field, I mean that when you're presented with challenges in other areas of your life, that you can take ownership and overcome them yourself. I guess that's kind of what the journey has been, building that resilience. And when you have those moments of uncertainty and those downtimes where something happens or you don't perform as you wish, when you do get the opportunity to do it, the levels of joy are, I believe, quite a lot greater. So you're smiling, you're happy, you're grateful, you know, all those things that make your life worth living, that's what it would feel like. We're gonna take on the world.